poll. I have this YouTube short. Yes, I am on. Yes, we are going to watch a fucking YouTube short of Beto
Just
O'Rourke. Remember him? Remember Beto back in, what was it, 2016? I think it was. That was when I first remember hearing of him. He has, since kind of fallen off a little bit. I would say he ran for governor in Texas, but got beat by Greg Abbott. Now, I remember thinking that Beto O'Rourke was cool. I, I quickly learned, however, that he really is kind of like a centrist Democrat, maybe a little left of centrism, but he, a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then. And his criticism of the Democrats in this clip from Pod Save America, I think, is spot on. I do, however, still take issue with some things that he said. So Beto O'Rourke sat down with the Pod Save boys and kind of flamed the Democratic establishment for not pulling Joe Biden out of the presidential race sooner. Let's hear what he has to say.
to be clear, Biden should not have run again. And to be even more clear, he failed this country in the most important job that he had. In fact, the entire rationale for his presidency the first time and the rationale he tried to sell us on for his attempt to run for reelection. Only I can stop Donald Trump. And he failed.
Fundamental messaging flaw. And this is where my disagreements with Beto start to surface, because yes, Joe Biden failed us. He failed the citizens of the United States of America, not because he lost to Donald Trump, but because he failed to transform this country in any meaningful way after his first 2 years as president. Beto will go on to talk about how people wanted change. People wanted change. And again, part of that is why Kamala underperformed, because she chose not to separate herself from Joe Biden. Democratic messaging about how bad Donald Trump is was fine in 2016. It was even fine in 2020. But by that point, Trump has his base. You have people who voted for him twice, 3 times now. You can no longer run on the Trump bad card, because then you just look like a fucking crybaby. And I would tend to agree. Yes, I understand Donald Trump bad. Donald Trump is very bad. But you can't just say Trump is bad and not provide an enticing alternative to voters. You can say Trump is bad. Trump is bad on healthcare because in his first term, 2.5 million people lost healthcare. I don't recall the exact number. It was a couple million. So in response to that, you can say, I'm going to not only expand Obamacare, but I'm going to introduce legislation for Medicare for all. So that way, nobody will ever lose healthcare coverage regardless of who the president is. You could say that Donald Trump is bad on workers' rights, right? Donald Trump is bad on economic policy. But you have to come out and say that I'm going to fight for a $17 minimum wage. I'm going to fight for everyone to have paid family leave and paid sick leave. You can say that Donald Trump is bad on not bringing down costs, but you can't just stop at that. Like, do you see the theme here? Do you understand? Like, you have to bring substance to the voters. I firmly believe that as someone running for office, you have to compel people to vote for you. We are no longer living in an age where Democrats can skate by just because they're not Republicans, because they have become increasingly more Republican-like. And why vote for the dire Republican when you can get the full Republican? You have to give people a reason to vote for you.
Failed to do that. And it's not just you and me, but our kids and grandkids and the generations that follow that might have to pay the price for this. We might very well lose, the greatest country that this world has ever known.
Yeah, that's cope, brother. I don't understand. Like, this is, yeah, like, this guy is just a lib. The greatest country the world has ever known, despite the fact that 40,000 people die every year because they don't have health insurance. The greatest country that the world has ever known, even though there's 500,000 homeless people. The greatest country the world has ever known, even though now there's more wealth inequality than there was at the time of the French Revolution. Like, save it, dude. I'm so fucking sick and tired of these lip service Democrats, of these loser ass Democrats who have never, who have never accomplished anything. It'd be different if Beto was someone who tried to do something and got shut out by the Democratic Party, very much like how Bernie Sanders has over the years. That is a guy who consistently fights for the right issues and compels people to vote for him. Like, Beto does not do that. He's very much now like a platitude ass Democrat.
And it might be in part because of the decision that Biden and those around him made to run for reelection instead of having an open primary where the greatest talent that the Democratic Party can muster could be on that stage to have a competition of ideas and track record and vision and really excite not just Democrats, but the people of this country who did want change. I mean, if anything was clear coming out of 2024, they wanted change. And to literally run the oldest guy who many people accurately, to your point, said, I just don't think he is capable of doing this. And I know that I saw the...
I do agree with him on this point. He cooked here, I fear. And I do appreciate him being like a prominent person in the Democratic Party saying this, because this has been taboo. The Democrats have refused to acknowledge the fact that Joe Biden was a corpse. He was a husk. He was he looked like the fucking chocolate lady from SpongeBob. Like, I remember when they first invented that shit. Like, he can say that about a goddamn peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That is how old that motherfucker is, dude. And the Democrats are like, no, there's actually nothing wrong. This guy is totally fine, even though we refuse to let him go outside, even though we refuse to let him talk for more than 2.5 minutes at a time because he literally cannot form a coherent sentence. I do also agree that, yeah, the Democrats should have had an open primary. Not that, like, I understand why they picked Kamala Harris, and I do think that Kamala Harris would have experienced significantly more success if she stuck with her original messaging and she distanced herself from Joe Biden more. I don't think, in open primary for the Democrats really changes anything unless there was someone in there like Bernie Sanders, someone who is actually willing to make, to make a change, someone like J.B. Pritzker. Like, I wouldn't want an open Democratic primary if it was just Gavin Newsom and Pete Buttigieg and Gretchen Whitmore, pardon me, whatever I don't even give a fuck what her name is. If they're just like all diet Biden. But yes, the Democrats should not have allowed Joe Biden to even consider running for election again. His fucking family should have came to him and said, Dad, you are insane. You cannot even tie your goddamn shoes right now. Do you have any idea where you are? And he would be like, yeah, I'm in Dakota. It's like, bro, which Dakota? Like, that is the kind of mental decline that we were experiencing.
Congresswoman and the congressman on CNN saying these running circles around us in the briefing rooms behind closed doors. It doesn't add up with what I'm seeing with my own lying eyes.
That's also wild. Like, it's also a wild cope, because it's not as if like old people are this undiscovered species. Everyone knows old people. Like, everyone has grandparents and aunts and uncles and people in their 70s and 80s. Like, you encounter old people outside all the time. And you can very clearly tell when someone is just like, dealing with old people stuff, which is totally normal. If you're 75, 80, 85 years old, we're not expecting you to be able to do long division with your fucking eyes closed. We're not expecting you to go out and whip a Formula One car around Monaco. And that is fine. But when you're the president, we doubly don't want that. The Democrats trying to convince people that Joe Biden was fine was a massive, massive blunder. And I don't think that they have yet to acknowledge that.
I think that credibility problem is going to persist up until when Democrats say we fucked up and we made a terrible mistake.
That will never happen, by the way.
Just to be
that the Democrats will never admit fault. Are you kidding me? This is the party of perpetual losership and the party of lack of accountability. You think that the party who blames the voters for not voting hard enough is going to come out and admit any wrongdoing with mishandling Joe Biden and his dementia, like, you are a psycho if you think that. And I don't know if Beto believes that or not. I think that he's just making a statement. I'm sure that he thinks that the Dems are fucking stupid just from having to, just from hearing what he was saying before. But that'll never happen. That'll happen in, like, when one of these current establishment Democrats decides to write a book, a tell-all book about, the about the Biden administration and how they were the only person in the briefing room who was like, this guy is unfit. And it's like, okay, well, you're doing that like 20 years too late. And like, we have no more fucking civil liberties. And it's the goddamn Handmaid's Tale.